PNC Financial Services says don't expect last month's gains to be as strong.
The September number is really going to be distorted by the terrible hurricanes. So I'm actually expecting a number that shows very little in the way of job growth.
Hurricane Irma in particular occurred during the period when the Labor Department surveys job growth, so it's likely to have an especially big impact. But Hoffman says the effects are likely to be temporary, and the job market will almost certainly rebound by the end of the year. Jim Zaroli, NPR News, New York.
This is NPR. The National Hurricane Center says Tropical Storm Nate is moving into the Caribbean Sea, headed for the Gulf of Mexico. The storm may soon strengthen into a hurricane. The center predicts that it will hit the U.S. Gulf Coast by the end of this weekend. The Hurricane Center forecasts that Nate could strike an area from Louisiana and Mississippi to Alabama and the Panhandle of Florida. A federal watchdog agency is cracking down on payday lenders and others.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Well, just when it seemed that the human tragedy unfolding in Puerto Rico in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria was going to really dominate the news coverage this week, with the president set to go down to Puerto Rico on Tuesday, and with the whole thing, unfortunately,
watch out,
really
vehicle stopped on shoulder ahead in 1 mile. Stay to the left to I-5 South, Los Angeles.
Governor, and she feels the best way to raise her stature is to try to.
What does it mean to have OCD? These are 5 common symptoms. By Jeffrey Kluger.
Shut up.
Having
Well, we speak to each other.
How often?
Yeah, maybe once a week. And he's still asking me for advice, yes. He asked me about which should I...
Welcome to Real News on this Thursday, October the 5th, 2017. I'm David Knight. Today we're going to be looking at some updates to the information about the shooting. We have the sheriff now joining what we see and hear from videos and witnesses who were there at the event. The sheriff is now saying maybe he wasn't a lone shooter. He must have had help. He's kind of a Superman guy. Remember, I did a video a couple of days ago. I think it was on Monday, maybe Tuesday at the very least, but I think it was on Monday. I said, how did this guy go from an accountant to Jason Bourne? And that was the information that we were given at the time. There's a lot of issues with the official lone wolf story, and people are starting to look at this, and even the law enforcement officers there in Las Vegas are questioning the lone wolf shooter narrative. But the real issue, I think, today, and we're going to talk about this in depth, is a move by the GOP towards gun control. We have to understand that the GOP has taken the lead, even though the Democrat politicians have really backed down on this. We're not hearing the kind of strident demands for bans of weapons and so forth. We had Hillary Clinton come out, and basically, her first legislative win. She got the Hearing Protection Act stopped, but it was Paul Ryan who did it for her. Hillary Clinton couldn't get health care through in 92 or 93 when she was trying to push this through as First Lady. She hasn't been able to get anything else through, but she got the Hearing Protection Act suspended, and it was with the help of Speaker Paul Ryan. Isn't that amazing? And we're going to take a look at the statements of the GOP, and of course, the celebrities, the whining celebrities, the people like Michael Moore and Jimmy Kimmel, the amazing statements made by them, and some of the college professors from Harvard and others who are saying the NRA is a terrorist group. We're going to talk about that. There's actually a proposed constitutional amendment that comes from Michael Moore, and I think it's very interesting because in it, he lays down all the lies, the misconceptions of the left about the Second Amendment. He codifies it into one little brief statement there. So it's kind of interesting to look at what Michael Moore has there. But understand, the real enemies are the GOP in this fight. We're taking friendly fire in the war on the Second Amendment. And that's the thing that I think is the most urgent issue here. Regardless of the long-term strategy, regardless of the actual tactics that are being used, we have to understand that we are under fire here. And this isn't simply about some novelty device that they want to ban. I believe this is going to be much broader in terms of the jurisdictional control that they're going to hand over to the ATF. We'll see what happens. But clearly, when we look at the statements of the GOP, they do not understand or appreciate or support the principles and the literal wording of the Second Amendment. They don't care about your individual liberty. And they're going to throw it under the bus in the claim of protecting public safety. We're going to have a couple of guests today. We're going to have Lee Stranahan. We're going to have Matt Dubiel. We also want to take a look at the Trump agenda. How is the Trump agenda moving? Well, I don't know. It's the usual suspects that we have in the Congress that are shutting this down. So a lot of the same people, the Republicans, of course, are taking the lead and making sure that Trump cannot get rid of this persistent investigation by the Russians. Isn't that interesting? That this investigation of Russian hacking, quote unquote, of the election continues. Charges filed with anybody, no real political motive here involved in the shooting. There's nobody else involved in the shooting. We'll take all those cameras. We'll take all that evidence. We've seen this all before. So stay with us. We're going to be coming right back. And I'm going to give you a quick news break before we get into the updates about gun control, about the shooter, and some updates about surveillance. We've actually got some good news coming. Something must be done about it, and clearly that is the instrument of choice by some individuals. So, and this is in New Jersey. See, in New Jersey, one of the areas where they have stringent gun control, if you can't get a gun, you can still do it with frying pans. All right, we have American optimism about the economy hitting an all-time high. This is in a new CNBC survey. And yet, at the same time, we have, how is confidence in your privacy? Are you confident about your privacy? You know, we've had probably more than half of Americans had their identity stolen in a single hack with Equifax. And actually, it wasn't a single hack. They had been hacked prior to that. They didn't disclose that. They didn't disclose the biggest one.